Welcome to Bible Study Live with Matt. I'm Matt. I do not know why my camera is doing some kind of non-HD quality action, but it is. So this is what we're rolling with today. We are getting ready to close 2021. Thank you, Jesus. And today I want to talk about this. Are we buying the blame game lie? Are we buying into the lie of the blame game? My wife and I are digging into a whole year studying the Bible, starting the book of Genesis. And what we read this morning just kind of stirred up my thoughts. And I thought, hey, let's dig into where the blame game began. Now, why would I bring this all up? I'll tell you why. Because we seem to live in a culture where everything is everyone else's fault. Let me say that again, because just in case nobody heard me. We live in a culture where today we seem to think everything that goes wrong is someone else's fault. God forbid, we take responsibility for the things that we've done. And we say, gee, because I made this bad decision, this is what's going wrong in my life. But the reality is we make bad decisions. And because we make bad decisions, there are consequences. And so in society today, though, for some reason, we've gotten to the point where nothing's anybody's fault unless it's someone else's. It's not the fault of a student that they're doing poorly in school. It's the fault of the environment around them. It's not the fault that someone can't get a job. It's the fault of somebody years ago hating their grandparents. It's not the fault that that employers are firing people en masse. It's the fault of people who are too selfish to get a vaccination. These are the things that are being said. No matter what it is, no matter which political crap, blah, 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 blah. For some reason, society today has shifted from one of responsibility where we say, listen, I'll make my choice. I have the freedom to do it. And I also have the freedom of reaping the consequences if it's a bad choice. We've shifted from that in this world to a society of blame game. But guess what? We actually haven't shifted. Would you believe that that's been going on since the beginning of humanity? It's nothing new, but it's a great time of year to recognize the blame game problem so that we can start off again, anew, taking some personal responsibility. You know, mentor of mine for years, I call him a buddy. He probably calls me a dude that he knows, if he even were to talk about me at all. But a guy who's been a mentor of mine actually did Chris and I a really big solid at our first Rockstar event. Grant Cardone always said this. He said, take 100% responsibility. If you take responsibility for every single thing that happens in your life, everything. He was like, getting sick, whatever. Some just seems kind of extreme, but he's like, look, if you take 100% responsibility for everything, then you're never in a position where you feel powerless. You're always in a position where you feel like all I need to do is figure out the right choice to make to move in a positive direction. And there's some validity to that. I mean, if you think about it, the reality is every time I say, well, I couldn't because someone else, what I'm really saying is I have no power, no authority. Someone else has it all and they control me. Ooh, now that is an interesting perspective, right? But today what we're going to do is we're going to dig into where the blame game began. We're going to begin at the beginning, as Stephen Covey says. No, he says begin with the end in mind, but we're going to begin at the beginning. And that is in a delightful little story in a garden with a man and a woman who were head over heels for each other, had the freedom to experience all the goodness that God had to offer. Oops. And then this happens. So let's read Genesis chapter 3. Now the serpent was the most cunning of all. You know what? I want to read this from the Message today. I just feel like the Message is such a good read. And I think it's going to be a little more fun in the Message today. So, oops, not the TLB, not the Living Bible. Yeshua. That's, there's a lot of Hebrew in that one. All right. Here we go. The Message. The serpent was clever. I'm going to read it in a cool voice. It's probably not that cool, but, the sinuses are finally clearing up and I feel cool. Now the serpent was clever, more clever than any wild animal God had made. He spoke to the woman, do I understand that God told you not to eat from any tree in the garden? The woman said to the serpent, not at all. We can eat from the trees in the garden. It's only about the tree in the middle of the garden that God said, don't eat from it. Don't even touch it or you'll die. The serpent told the woman, you won't die. God knows at the moment that you eat from that tree, you'll see what's really going on. You'll be just like God, knowing everything, ranging all the way from good to evil. When the woman saw that the tree looked like good eating and realized what she would get out of it. She'd know everything. She took and ate the fruit and then gave some to her husband and ate it. And he ate. Immediately, the two of them did see what's really going on. They saw themselves naked. They sewed fig leaves together as makeshift clothes for themselves. When they heard the sound of God strolling in the garden in the evening breeze, the man and his wife hid in the trees in the garden, hid from God. God called to the man, "Where are you?" He said, "I heard you in the garden. I was afraid because I was naked and I hid." God said, "Who told you you were naked? Did you eat from that tree I told you not to eat from?" The man said, "The woman you gave me as a companion, she gave me fruit from the tree, and yes, I ate it." God said to the woman, "What is this that you've done?" "The serpent seduced me," she said. "I ate it." God told the serpent, "Because you've done this, you're cursed. Cursed beyond all cattle and wild animals. Cursed to slink on your belly and eat dirt all your life. I'm declaring war between you and the woman, between your offspring and hers. He'll wound your head, you'll wound his heel." He told the woman, "I'll multiply your pains in childbirth. You'll give birth to your babies in pain. You'll want to please your husband, but he'll lord it over you." He told the man, "Because you listened to your wife and ate from the tree that I commanded you not to eat from. Don't eat from this tree. The very ground is cursed because of you. Getting food from the ground will be as painful as having babies for your wife. You'll be working in pain all your life long. The ground will sprout thorns and weeds. You'll get your food the hard way, planting and tilling and harvesting, sweating in the field from dawn to dusk until you return to that ground yourself, dead and buried. You started as dirt and you'll end up as dirt." The man known as Adam named his wife Eve because she was the mother of all living. God made leather clothing for Adam and his wife and dressed them. God said, "The man has become like one of us, capable of knowing everything, ranging from good to evil. What if he now should reach out and take from the fruit of the tree of life and eat and live forever?" Never. This cannot happen. So God expelled them from the Garden of Eden and sent them to work the ground, the same dirt out of which they'd been made. He threw them out of the garden, stationed an angel cherubim and a revolving sword of fire east of it, guarding the path to the tree of life. Holy golden calf, Moses. This is a heck of a story. Hold on, I got to cough out some of this yuck, and I don't want to do it in the mic. Thank you for understanding. All right, there's so much to unpack in this crazy story. But what I want to do is I want to back up the train to the beginning of this dialogue between the serpent and Eve, okay? I want to back it up because, check it out. The amazing thing is that the serpent says, "Do I understand God told you not to eat from any tree in the garden?" Like, that should have been a red flag for Eve right there. She knew better. As a matter of fact, she replied and said, "No, we can eat from all the trees. It's just that one, the one," which means they could have chosen to eat from the tree of life, the tree of eternal life. Ooh, maybe a metaphor for Jesus. Just popped in my head. They could have chosen eternity, but instead, they chose control. See, God had already created man and woman in his image, right? In the image of God, he created the male and female. This was already done. But the serpent says, no. You'll know what's really going on. You'll be like God. You'll know everything. But the funny thing is, the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, they already did have the ability to discern what's right and wrong because they knew that it was wrong to eat from that tree. But they didn't know everything. They didn't understand everything. They didn't know shame. They didn't know disappointment. They didn't know fear. They didn't have any of those negative emotions because God didn't wire them in that way. God wired them to experience joy and excitement, right? Like Adam saw Eve, he was like, "Whoa, flesh of my flesh," and then they hook up, right? Like first intimate moment, like within the first book of the Bible, we see physical intimacy. We see this beautiful husband and wife hitting the dirt and going at it, like loving on each other. It's magic. There was no shame. There was no disappointment. There was no sadness. There was no unmet expectations. And then the little white lie slithers in and says, real reason God doesn't want you to do this. What was really happening? The same thing that happens today. We want to be God. We want to be our own God. We don't want to follow somebody else. We don't want somebody else to be pulling the strings. Guess what? God's not pulling the strings. God gave us free will. But the problem that happened is there was an opportunity, even after making the mistake, there was an opportunity for Eve and Adam to own it. When God said, hey, Adam, where are you at? And Adam said, I'm over here hiding because I'm naked. He actually said, I heard you were in the garden. I was afraid because I was naked, so I hid. God said, who told you were naked? Did you eat from the tree that I told you not to eat from? In that moment, Adam had the opportunity to say, yes, I did, and I made that choice. He could have taken responsibility for this. He could have. He was there beside Eve. If you read the original language, it said Eve took a bite and gave it to her husband who was with her, which means Adam was right there beside her when the serpent was saying, hey, no. God doesn't want you to eat from that because of this. Adam could have made the choice to say, babe, we got a good life. God loves us. Why are we listening to this idiot? Let's not eat that. But he didn't. Instead, Adam threw blame. He said, the woman you gave me as a companion, she gave me fruit from the tree, and yes, I ate it. Now, the interesting thing here is, at first blush, we could say that Adam was blaming Eve, but you know who Adam was really blaming for his problems? God. And here's the words, the woman you gave me. Let me say it again. The woman you gave me. Adam blamed God for his problem. And God still showed him grace. Instead of going, are you seriously blaming me, dude? I gave you the perfect companion. Like you've been sitting here picking through animals, naming them, couldn't find the great one. I give you flesh of your flesh, bone of your bone. Remember that experience you just had with her? Wow. Like, remember that, Adam? Like, when God came in and said, Adam, where are you? And Adam's like, oh, I hid because I'm naked. And when God says, who said you're naked? And he's like, oh, the woman you gave me. Adam wasn't actually blaming Eve as much as he was blaming God for giving Eve to him. Just moments ago, Adam was celebrating Eve being his perfect companion. Flesh of his flesh, bone of his bone. They lay together as one. The sex was so good that for that reason, a man will leave his father and mother to be one with his wife. Now that is an amazing story. Yet when the problems begin, Adam blames God for his problem. But Adam had a choice. When Eve said, this looks good, I'm going to eat it. You want some, honey? As soon as the temptation began, Adam could have said, no, babe, bad idea. We're out on this. You beat it. My wife and I are out. We're not in on this whole eat from this tree that's going to bring us death program. We are made in the image of God. We're good. God loves us. Don't know who you are, sleazeball, but beat it. But Adam didn't. Adam, who was right there with her, also ate from it. And then when God called him to account and said, what'd you do? Who told you you're naked? Adam blamed God. The woman you gave me, she told me to, and I ate out of it. But God still shows some grace because remember, God said, don't eat from that tree or you'll die, which death does come into the scene. But if we look at it, God showed so much grace because he didn't go, boom, dead, on the spot, start over, new dirt, let's form some other ones. Instead, in spite of the bad choice of the blame game, God then goes, well, I guess I'll ask Eve. I'll give her an opportunity. Maybe she'll own it. Maybe she'll say, yeah, I did, and it was a bad choice. Nope, what does she do? Nope, the serpent told me to do it. And God, instead of calling her out on her BS too and going, but you had a choice. You could have said no. Instead of even calling her out on it, what does he do? He says, you know what, snake, because you did this, because you were the one that came in and stirred up this trouble, here's the consequence for you. But then he does go back to man and woman and says, you know what, now there's consequences for your choice. And here's the deal. Even when we acknowledge our faults, we still have consequence in our choice. Adam, Eve, they didn't acknowledge the consequence. They played the blame game. And the blame game started at the beginning, right? Like, so society today is full of blame shifting. Nothing's anybody's own fault, right? The reason things are hard is because I grew up poor and my parents didn't know how to manage money, so I still struggle with managing money. You know what the reality is? I've also listened to Dave Ramsey's money makeover, and I know how to do it. I just get excited about crap that I want and I blow money, right? I don't store it well. I don't save it well. I don't plan well, right? There's honesty if we own our crap. I could blame all the bad influence I've seen about my father and the 80 million, multiple wives and multiple children he made with multiple women. And I could always say, well, when I went through a period in my life where I was making very bad relationship choices, it's really because of the example from my dad. You know what? What I saw was a bad example. I knew it was a bad example, and I could have chosen a better one, but I did it for years. We have a habit as human beings of blaming other people because we don't want the consequence. But if we're honest, whether we try and blame shift or we accept the blame, we're still going to experience consequence from our choices. The difference is when we don't own our decisions, we carry the guilt and the shame of the decision as a consequence as well. Whereas when we own it, we begin to heal. There's a reason the scriptures say, confess your sins to one another so you could be healed. Look, we all do dumb stuff. We all do. And Adam and Eve prove it in the beginning of the story. They do some stupid stuff. And they have consequences as a result. I have to wonder how differently it could have gone if God would have said, who told you you were naked? And if Adam would have said, listen, I know that I'm naked because of the shame I feel, because you know what we did? God, we ate from that tree you told us not to, and I am so sorry. That was a really bad choice. And I know you told us we were going to die, so if this is the last moment I got, I just want you to know I'm sorry and I love you. Wonder if the story would have played out differently if God would have said, I forgive you. Let's try this again. And you know what? Let me get this tree out of the garden. I know you got free will, but let me just remove this temptation for you. Who knows? Who knows if the story would have been different? See, there's something so beautiful, though. There's something so beautiful in the brokenness of this story that we can all relate to. I know when I read the fall in Genesis, and we want to get as far from that as we can, but when I read it, there's something beautiful because it reminds me that the people, the first, those created in God's image, created in the image of perfection, that free will is part of being perfectly created in God's image. And I have that same free will. I too am created in the image of God. And just like them, I make mistakes. And just like them, I have a choice every time I make a mistake. Just like them, there are consequences to every mistake, but looking at their example shows me that there's a better way to handle it when I make a mistake. The way they handled it was to play the blame shifting game. And it continued. It continued to their children. You fast forward to Cain and Abel, right? Cain kills Abel. Why? Because God accepted Abel's offering. Because Abel gave it to him out of a glad heart. Cain gave God out of a not so glad heart. And God was like, listen, if you're not happy to give it to me, I don't want it. And then Cain got angry and went and killed Abel. He blamed his brother for what he did, which was give God his leftovers. And God was like, look, dude, if you don't want to give it to me, I don't want your leftovers. Gave them. Well, Cain felt rejected by God, but God never rejected Cain. Cain really was rejecting God by giving him his leftovers. Yet the blame game continued. Cain blamed Abel by being too good and went and clubbed him in the head and killed him. See, the blame game is a cycle, and it can stop the moment we decide to stop it. You and I can choose today to acknowledge we're imperfect. We're imperfect people following a perfect Jesus and trying to give our devotion to our perfect God, but we're imperfect. And when we make mistakes, we can make the choice to say, I screwed up and I own it and I accept the consequences and I'm going to move forward in a better way. And then our children can learn good lessons from us. Our friends can learn good lessons from us. Our coworkers can learn good lessons from us. And we can live a better life. We can bring a little more heaven to earth. We can bring a little more of what's supposed to be here. Honesty, love, integrity. Or we can continue what began in that first chapter. Well, I guess it's actually the third chapter, but the first book. First 5 books of the Bible, but Genesis, right? The first one. Chapter 3, we could choose to continue that cycle of blame shifting. And we could do what they did. And oftentimes we do. How many times in your life have you experienced something bad and you say, God, why are you doing this to me? Or, God, why are you letting this happen to me? Man. But if we're honest, how many times in our life have we been in a really bad situation and we're saying, God, why are you letting this happen to me? But if we were to actually stop, we could recognize that what we were going through was a result of a series of choices that we had actually made on our own. How many times? I know personally, there have been moments where I have said, God, why are you letting this happen? And I know for a fact that if I had just looked in a mirror, I would know the answer of why it was happening. Because this was a result of a choice that I made, that was a result of a choice that I made, that was a result of another choice that I made that I wasn't proud of. And they were just choices to try and dig myself out of a hole instead of just owning it at the beginning and eating the consequence then. My friends, look, you know the beautiful thing about the story we read in Genesis chapter 3 about the dumb decision that Adam and Eve made? Do you know what the beautiful thing about that is? It's the hope. The hope that we can make better choices. It's the hope and the grace that God showed. Like he said, if you eat from that tree, you'll surely die. Guess what? He didn't snuff them out right then. He said he gave them the grace to live. He said, you can't live in this garden. You can't have all the goodies that I promised you would come with it because I have to keep my word. And you didn't do what I told you to do. So guess what? There is a consequence. But I'm still going to let you live. I'm still going to let you make the best out of the life that I've given you. He gave them so much grace. In spite of that, he's like, look, childbirth's going to be sucky and working the ground's going to be just as painful for you, Adam. So enjoy. Sorry about that. You don't got to go home, but you can't stay here. Bye, you're out of the garden. But he gave them grace. He gave them life still. He gave them the ability to make a family and have children still. God does that with you and me today, doesn't he? In spite of our bad choices. How many times, if you look back, I know, like I look back and there are some things I've done growing up that I'm like, I am lucky to still be alive. You know, the fact that I woke up this morning after many years of very bad life choices, the fact that I am still here to talk about it, whew, you know, that in and of itself is an absolute blessing. And I bet I'm not the only one that feels that way. Friends, I want to encourage you. Here's the thing. You're not going to live perfectly in your life. You're going to hit some hiccups. You're going to hit some speed bumps. You're going to hit a few roadblocks. You're going to make a few mistakes. You're going to screw it up. It's going to happen. But I want to encourage you with this. When you make those mistakes, if you own them, say, yep, I did, and it wasn't cool. I know, and I'm sorry. You'll be able to leave it there. You might have to do some rebuilding. But you won't have to do any more blame shifting or trying to cover up or trying to figure out. Once you've made a mistake and you own the mistake, you can make a plan to move forward from the mistake and build a life worth living. But when we shift the blame, what we're doing is we're also letting go of the control or any ability at all to rectify the problem. When we shift blame to others for things that in our hearts we know we're responsible for, there is no fix to the problem. How does this apply in 2021 and 2022 and beyond? If you're not happy in your job and you say, but I can't get a better one because I don't have the education, because no one's going to give me a shot, no one's going to give me a promotion, no one's going to, you're probably right, no one's going to give you a shot, no one's going to give you a promotion. But if it requires more education to get the career you really want, you have an opportunity to make that choice no matter how late in life it is to say, I'm going to get that education. Or you have the opportunity to keep blaming other people and stay exactly where you are. See, that's a choice. If you're in a bad relationship with somebody who's just abusive toward you, mistreats you, doesn't respect you, and you say, well, I'm never going to have a better relationship, so I'm just going to stay in this one. But if then you continue to go, but he is horrible and he's abusive and he's mean and he doesn't treat me well, you have a choice. You have a choice to leave him. But if you don't choose to and you keep saying he, you're letting him have the power. See, same goes for a she. If you're a guy and you're in a relationship and she's mistreating you, and you say, well, she's horrible. She mistreats me. She this, she that. Just like Adam did with Eve. She told me to eat the thing. She did this. She did that. Guess what happens? You can never honestly move forward in a good direction. Now, I'm not telling you to run from a simple disagreement. Okay? I'm not like going out there and encouraging people like, right now, go home and tell your spouse, we don't agree on stuff. Bye, you suck. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is this. Take responsibility for your stuff. Take responsibility for your stuff. If you make a mistake, take responsibility for it. If you make a bad choice, let's not even call it a mistake. You do something stupid. Take responsibility for it. God has given you free will. He's created you in his image, which means you have the opportunity to choose the right thing too. So let me encourage you as you prepare to end this year and move into a new one, which is just moving from one day to another. Every day you wake up is an opportunity to make a new choice. Can I encourage you? Learn from the mistakes from thousands of years ago and make the choice today to stop the blame game and start taking 100% responsibility for your life, because God has given you one life with multiple opportunities. Start choosing the right ones. Thanks for tuning in to Bible Study Live this morning. I appreciate it. If you tune in late, jump in and read Genesis 3 and look at all the cool opportunities God gave them to own their crap instead of blaming it on one another, and take it as a great life lesson. Look, if you want to be part of what we're kicking off at the beginning of the year, text the word church to 833-981-0002. We're kicking off House Church, which is basically sharing a meal and wrestling with the Bible with some friends, and we want to encourage you to open your house up to do the same. We'll be sharing the stuff online so that you can watch it for free and download little thought starter questions, all 100% free. It's just our way of trying to be disciples who make disciples. Disciples are learners. We want to learn more about God and Jesus, and we want to encourage you to too. So there you go. If you need a Bible, head over to besaltandlight.church, fill in the form. My wife and I'll be happy to get you one. Thanks for tuning in. Love you guys. I will see you tomorrow and Friday for the last 2 Bible study lives of the year.